Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Wendy Gates Corbett. I've only known her a few months, but she has made a huge impression on me. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Mindy. I'm delighted to be with you today.
So this is the Thoughtful Leader podcast, as you know, and you have been selected as somebody who's thoughtful, and I'm going to be thoughtful and turn off my notifications. And we're going to keep recording here because that's what we do. So the thing is, your topic of belonging is so important. It always is, but especially these days. Can you tell the listeners what it's all about and why it's essential?
Yeah, for me, the idea of belonging is for every individual to feel safe, to be fully expressive, that they don't have to hide any part of themselves, that they can express their whole being without fear. And I believe that's true for us as individuals. And when we think about the workplace, it's really important for workplaces to create the kinds of environments where their people do feel safe to be fully expressive.
Okay, so what got you into this area? Because it's a real passion. It's not just something you do. But what's your story then?
Starts with my personal journey. It started from me experiencing a fear of not belonging. So let me start with a bit of my personal background. I am biracial and I'm adopted by a white family. And I have always felt like I'm a part of my family. But I always felt like there was a neon sign pointing down at me saying, look at how different she is. And when I was 5 years old, I was best friends with the girl next door who was a white girl. When we would play, we would have a great time. And then as little girls do, we'd get into fights. And when we did, she would point her finger at me and say, you don't belong here because you're different. And she said that all the time. I didn't realize it, but I had internalized those words. And that phrase, you don't belong here, you're different, guided my behavior for more than 35 years. I believed at a subconscious level, I believed that if you thought I was different from you, then I wouldn't belong. So I spent an incredible amount of mental energy trying to convince you that I was the same as you, whoever you are. I was never safe. I never felt safe to be myself because I felt like I had to convince you that I was like you. And that meant that I was incredibly defensive. And I spent so much of my psychic and spiritual energy in your head. And even if you convinced me that I'd made it in, we're good, then I still had to consistently monitor my environment to make sure I stayed in. I had no idea that I was even doing that until I was at a stoplight. I was 35 years old. I was driving in my car by myself and all was fine in my world. I was listening to the radio. I was singing a Mariah Carey song. I pull up at a stoplight. And on one side of me is a car of Black women. On the other side is a car of white women. And all of a sudden, I started thinking, oh my gosh, who do I try to be like? I had this crisis at a stoplight by myself. with the women in the cars beside me, it wasn't like they were taunting me. I wasn't on their radar. I flipped out at that stoplight trying to decide who to try to be like, who to try to belong with. And at that stoplight, I was silent. I heard a tiny voice say, "What about me, Wendy?" That was my voice. I had no idea how much energy I had been spending trying to be like everyone else. And when I asked myself, what about me? What do I want? That was the very beginning of a journey that helped me realize that I can determine where I belong. And I don't need you to tell me where I belong and whether I belong. As I continued on that journey, and as I stopped climbing into your head and spending all of that energy trying to figure out how you see me, I started blossoming. I became myself. I let loose all this armor that I was barricading myself with, and I flourished. I've blossomed. I've become me. And since I've done that, I have attracted the kinds of people I've wanted to belong with all along. And it is amazing the freedom that I feel and the me that I feel and the me that I'm learning about. That feeling is incredible. We all deserve to have that feeling. So my journey into helping others feel like they belong and empowering others to reclaim their own sense of belonging has become so much more important to me, because I believe we all do deserve to belong, and we can. So that's how it became important to me. And I also, as an organizational psychologist, as I've started helping others be able to reclaim their own sense of belonging, I've started speaking and working with organizational leaders to help them create warm spaces where people feel safe. Whether they belong is not an issue. It's a no-brainer. It's something they know to their soul.
Wow. She's so eloquent, isn't she?
Oh, thank you.
I really got that. The message is so important. I really like the image of you at the stoplight and the cars next to you and everything like that. I wonder, though, you used the word subconscious, and I think that for many people could be very subconscious, like very deep. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to somebody who never even thought about this, and you're now making them think about this? What's the first step?
For me, I would suggest, when you notice that you are starting to think, I wonder if they think I'm, and fill in the blank with whatever you're worried about. When you start to have many of those thoughts, to me, that was an indicator that I was trying too hard to think about how they thought about me, and all of that mental energy, all of those wheels turning. That meant that was an indicator to me that I'm trying to climb into your head. So for me, when you notice that, ask yourself, what about me? And for me, that helped stop me climbing out, trying to climb into your head, and to stay in my own.
Thank you for sharing that. I know we all have conflicting emotions of wanting to belong or fit in and wanting to stand out. This is fascinating to me, because we're told both. We're told you've got to stand out, but you stand out too much and you're kind of standing alone. So do you have thoughts on this particular conflict, Wendy?
I think we will come to this delicate balance, and I think is very personal. And for me, it's better and healthier for me to focus on being fully me, whoever that is, and not trying to stand out and not trying to fit in, and just focusing on I'm being me. So for me, I have stopped trying to convince you of whatever label you want to put on me. I don't spend any energy on that anymore. You're going to label me. You are going to make sense of me however you need to. And I am just going to be me, because I know how to do that. I can control that. I can't control the labels you put on me or the reaction you have to me. So I think focusing on being fully you is the best way to be you.
Okay. And the other side of it is, because many of the people who listen to the podcast are leaders, and they don't necessarily lead a formal team, but they tend to step up. The thoughtful leader actually goes for opportunities to show others the way. So this idea of creating a safe space, a warm space, a place where people feel they can belong, that's essential. And we do have lots of pressures in society, and people who run a business have, the commercial and financial pressures and practical things and, keeping customers happy and everything. But in terms of the team, so whichever team people have around them, what are some tips that you have for leaders to help people feel safer, feel like they belong?
I think that a lot of leaders think that they need to provide the structure, a structure in which their team can operate. I want to encourage thoughtful leaders to think more about the space within that structure and making sure that the space within that structure has room to breathe, room to be silent, and room to listen, and to listen completely. Because when people feel listened to, when we feel heard, that validates our own sense of value. So I think that leaders can focus on creating a safe space by making sure that everyone feels heard without being responded to necessarily, but being heard.
Okay, so what if post-pandemic, companies have gone through a hard time and there are these stresses and perhaps, you have to work in a different way and there's more expense to make your environment COVID safe and all this kind of thing. Do you think it's difficult or challenging for leaders to give people time and space when their mind is thinking of all kinds of other aspects of the business?
I do think that is a challenge. And I think one of the areas where we need more thoughtful leadership is on the higher senior leader level to rethink what progress looks like. And instead of charging forth to try to make up for whatever we've lost or missed because of the pandemic, that to pause and think about making sure that we are moving forward safely, both physically safely, but also mentally and psychologically safely. When we do that, we will carry our teams and the progress that we make, the impact and the outcomes we make will be so much more significant if we don't charge forward without being thoughtful.
Well, thank you very much for bringing the term thoughtful in here, because that really is the difference that makes the difference. Many leaders have not experienced my own training. I haven't been everywhere in the world yet. And thoughtful leadership strategy is rather new. It does touch on psychological safety. It does touch on these aspects of caring for the team. And I agree with you. When you do that you have a loyal team, you have a productive team, you have less absenteeism and more loyalty, more productivity, and just, a really great energy in the team. So that it's counterintuitive, because I think the way we're conditioned to think is bottom line, or top line, bottom line, revenues, cost savings, efficiency.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that is what I heard. And listening to you makes me think about my own situation. And when we have a lot of projects on at our company, I sometimes just want to race through and make sure we cover everything on the calls. And, every day I have to think about these things. Every day, if I look back and think, have I really stopped and given someone the space? Have I really listened? Or could I be better? Usually the answer is, yeah, I could do better, and make a commitment, be better the next day. I mean, is that a good strategy?
Yes, we need to acknowledge that we may not have acted in the way we hoped or intended, but not beat ourselves up over it and become more intentional about doing something different the next time.
All right. Can you please help everybody understand some practical ways? So you've already spoken about help people to be heard, listen to them, create space. But what are some practical things that people can do for others in the workplace? Let's just talk about the workplace, because at home it's probably, an infinite number of things. Let's talk about work. What are some ways in which people can show others that it's a safe space and that they belong?
As I've done research into what creates cultures of belonging, of emotional safety, there are lots of things that contribute to that. The three themes that I saw in the research consistently is people feel like they belong when they feel connected to the people and the organizations with which they work. So creating connection, opportunities for connection, sending a text message with a smiley face, just an I'm thinking of you. I know that you exist. And exactly. Sending a quick instant message or a quick email, sending a picture of a flower, somehow letting the people we work with know that we are thinking of them. Not that we need something from them, but just a hello. Adding time in meetings, adding 5 minutes to a team meeting, to talk about something outside of work, whether it is what was a favorite dish when you were a kid, or favorite vacation memory, or something that is not work related, that is human centric and not work centric. Help us feel connected to the people we work with and the organizations we work with. People also feel like they belong when they feel respected. When it's clear that you as my leader value the strengths that I bring and the contribution that I make to our team and to the organization, you make me feel like I belong. The third theme that I see consistently is when people feel protected. And I look at this protection from a human perspective. When I know that you value my humanity, when you see my quirks and you don't hold them against me, when you make space for me to love the purple jelly beans, and you see that as a uniqueness of me, not something that makes me an outsider. So when I feel protected, when I know that you have my back, and whether you are my leader or my peer, that helps me feel like I belong. So behaviors, and one of the things I encourage teams to do is to surface, Mindy, what helps you feel connected? What helps you feel respected? And what can I do to help you feel protected? When we surface those behaviors, because we may have different things that make us feel connected, respected, and protected. So as a team, we can identify what those behaviors are and then take small steps to increase how frequently we perform those behaviors.
Wow. And I love looking at the macro issues, as you know, and the big picture. So imagine that there are teams and organizations all around the country and all around the world doing this work. Will it result in society being a place where more people feel like they belong? Is this going to have a cumulative effect if each person does it at their own level?
I do see a ripple effect in this. What I see, and I think I'm a personal example, I started my internal work of belonging, and I am gradually bringing it out to other individuals who are then bringing it out to individuals in their circles who are bringing it to organizations. So I do think that when we feel like we belong, we free up mental energy that we are using to guard ourselves against that fear of not belonging. We can turn that energy into creating connection. And I do see that happen. It's beautiful to see.
So we've talked about beautiful things. We've kept it all positive because you and I are super positive. I want to bring in FOMO and real conflict. And I'll try to finish on a positive note, but no promises. But FOMO is real, fear of missing out. And I think that comes when people see on Facebook, oh, that party happened or that thing happened and I wasn't part of it. I didn't even know about it. Feeling like you're missing out or like you're not part of the group let's talk about that first. What can be done either by the perpetrator or the victim?
Well, that's something that I'm particularly keen on because empathy is my top strength. I lead with empathy. So as someone who occasionally posts on social media, when I'm posting about an event that I was part of, I don't use language that sounds exclusive or that says you missed out, you should have been here. I focus on using positive language and inclusive language, and also encouraging language. Say, I can't wait for this to happen again, or I can't wait for the next time. I hope you can join us for the next one, so that people feel included. I also use messaging that is encouraging to say, you can be here for the next one. Or if I see someone else, like if I see your post about a party, I might say that I had a great time. I met great people, and I can't wait for some of my friends to experience this as well.
And the victim, let's say when, I don't know if it ever happens to you, but it happens to me and most people I know, we're reading something and we just have that feeling like, oh, I wasn't even invited to speak at that event, or I wasn't even, I didn't even know that was happening. And, that feeling of left out, it takes you right back to being 5, 6 years old, doesn't it? What do you do?
It does. And for me, that reminds me that when I start thinking, oh, I could have been a speaker there, or I could have gone to that conference, I could have been, I wish I was there. I remember that if I was meant to be there, I would have been there from a positive perspective and not from an exclusive kind of perspective. What about me? I believe that we always end up where we are meant to be. I don't like the phrase, everything happens for a reason. I think it's a little diluted. However, I do think that we are on the path we're meant to be on, and we are brought to the people we are meant to cross paths with.
This is great because we're talking about difficult concepts, and Wendy is going to flip it into the positive each time. So how about the really, really big issue of racial tensions, real societal problems, dangerous situations? I see things escalating. Maybe that's the lens I have on, but I'm really aiming to create world peace, as most of the good people I know are. What is your take on that?
I think that
the cat has a response for that.
Yes, I think the cat wants to speak about world peace. He's got some thoughts on it, and he wants to be heard. I think that we, as thoughtful leaders, we can create a space where feeling vulnerable about how to move forward, feeling uncertain about heading into unknown, unfamiliar territory, we need to model what it's like to be vulnerable and handling uncomfortable, unfamiliar situations in a safe way, to be bravely vulnerable and to say, I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. Instead of, I think many leaders think, I'm supposed to have all the answers. I'm supposed to guide us. While that is true, it is also true that we are in unknown territory in so many ways. So I think that this is a great opportunity to have some of these uncomfortable conversations in a safe way, modeling what it's like to be heard, to listen, not always try to provide answers, but to provide space to say, I hear you. I'm not sure where we are heading. We will head there together, though, safely.
Well, that just sounds great. Wendy Gates Corbett for president. I think we're almost at the end of our time together, which is very sad. It's been such a joy, and you've provided many, many insights for people about creating the space, about connecting, respecting, and protecting others, and some real hope, I think, because we are role models. Those of us who are presenting and delivering the podcasts, everybody listening, we're all interested in, and I think passionate about thoughtful leadership. And so it's us. The buck stops with us. So we're the role models. No pressure, guys. Wendy's given us lots of good things to think about. I want to thank you so much. Can people just find you on the internet by, we have the show notes in your bio, but what's your favorite way to be contacted?
Easiest way to reach me is through LinkedIn, Wendy Gates Corbett, no hyphen between Gates and Corbett.
Okay, well, guys, please do reach out to her. I know there's a lot more where that came from. Really grateful to you for being here today and talking about this. Thank you, Wendy.
Mindy, thank you so much for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.